This artist never wanted her art to be shown. How is it that after her death, it was exhibited over 100 times and even went to influence important expressionist artists? This is the story of Else Blankenhorn. Blankenhorn came from a wealthy German family. In her 20s and into her 30s, she suffers many losses in her life. Someone she was interested in romantically ends up marrying someone else, and she eventually loses her father and her grandmother. She suffers a kind of nervous breakdown, but ultimately spends the rest of her life institutionalized, mostly at a Swiss sanatorium called Bellevue. There she's diagnosed with something akin to schizophrenia. And it's really only after she becomes a patient that she starts to paint and draw, mostly working with watercolors. A lot of her work is thought to feature her as a kind of self-portrait or projection. This might be Blankenhorn. There's a certain odd idea, arguably a delusion, that influences her art. She believes herself to be the spiritual wife of Emperor Wilhelm II. And this image here, this banknote, actually is emblematic of her new life's purpose. She's supposed to resurrect all of these newly buried couples with these banknotes. Blankenhorn was actually a very private person. She didn't openly share this art, and yet somehow today we have access to all of her art. So how does this end up happening? One breach of privacy happened at the sanatorium itself. One of her psychiatrists actually showed her art to a famous co-patient, Ernst Ludwig Kirchner, who was one of the leaders of the German expressionist movement, which is art that is focused on depicting the artist's subjective experience. And Kirchner does later remark that he was inspired by Blankenhorn's work. Many of these artists, like Kirchner, who either had lived experience of mental health concerns and were admitted to these institutions themselves, were open about being influenced by madness or other mad art. Yet, towards the 1930s, as we have the National Socialist Party come to power in Germany, they started to distance themselves from these associations with madness, so to speak, given this political climate. Association with madness or degeneracy, quote unquote, could be life-threatening. Blankenhorn unfortunately dies from stomach cancer, and then her art is collected by Hans Prinzhorn. And Prinzhorn was an art historian and psychiatrist who actively collected the artistic works of patients, and which now form the large Prinzhorn collection. I'm left with mixed feelings about Blankenhorn's art. I mean, it's beautiful, but she didn't want it shared or known, and yet it's been publicly available for nearly a century now. Her contributions as a woman artist who also happened to be a patient of a psychiatric institution were not readily acknowledged. And this is true more broadly in these collections of patient art. They tend to feature the work of men, of male artists, even though there were similar numbers of men and women admitted to institutions in the 19th and 20th centuries.